You know that feeling when your thoughts are just swirling like trying to grab smoke? Or
Mhm.
maybe you're facing a problem and your mind just keeps hitting a wall.
Or you've got these big ideas kind of rattling around, but they just won't quite click into place.
Yeah, we've definitely all been there.
And what's really interesting is that those very moments, the mental fog or that creative block, they're actually a signal.
A signal. How
They're
so?
basically telling you it's time to try a different approach, a different way of thinking.
And that different approach, which we're going to really dig into today,
Yeah.
based on Alison Jones's book, is exploratory writing.
Right.
Now, let's be clear right off the bat.
Mm.
This isn't about crafting perfect prose or, writing for an audience.
Uh-huh.
This is writing purely for yourself.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as your kind of fast track to understanding how intentionally putting your thoughts down, paper, screen, whatever, can unlock real clarity. We'll be looking at Alison's insights, pulling in some related ideas too to show you how this can help, like in all areas of your life, really. Work challenges, just understanding your own head better.
So our mission today is to completely reframe how you see that blank page. It's not just a place to record what you already know.
No, it's a launch pad, a space for discovery. It's where you can actually figure out what you think and bring those fuzzy, half-formed ideas out into the light.
I like that launch pad.
The core idea right from the start is this.
Yeah.
See that blank page not as like an obstacle, but as open ground
Uh-huh.
for mental exploration.
Right.
And this works no matter what you're starting with, an interesting article you read, some research notes, even just your own scattered thoughts.
Okay, so Allison talks about how so much of our lives involves these like planned routes. The same commute, the usual errands. We don't often just wander.
Yeah, she contrasts that really nicely with the idea of mental micro-adventures.
Remember adventures.
Think about when you're on a familiar walk or run, and you suddenly decide, hey, I'll just take this little side path, just out of curiosity.
Right, see where it goes.
You might find a hidden garden, or maybe a shortcut you never knew existed. That's the spirit we want to bring to our thinking, using writing for that kind of exploration.
Exactly. Creating those little pockets of mental wandering. And Allison gives us 3 really compelling reasons why this mindset is so valuable. First, maybe the most appealing one, she says it's actually fun.
Which, let's face it, is a pretty good motivator.
Definitely.
But connecting it to the bigger picture, she also points out we're living in a time of really rapid change, holding on to rigid ways of thinking.
Yeah.
Well, it can really hold you back.
Absolutely. If we're not constantly exploring new perspectives, challenging our own assumptions, we just risk getting stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And her third point is that, as humans, we tend to see what we expect to see. We can
Okay.
easily miss what's right there in front of us.
That hits on our biases, doesn't it? Our ingrained thinking patterns can lead us down, well, unhelpful paths. We overlook stuff just because we're not looking with fresh eyes.
Okay, so when we do try to do deep thinking, it's often in structured settings, right? Like a workshop or a facilitated meeting.
And those can be great, really helpful. But what happens when you're on your own, facing a challenge, staring at that blank page?
That's where this really comes in.
This is where exploratory writing becomes so powerful. Allison argues it's like your own personal workshop or even a retreat that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Like having a secret tool in your mental toolkit. She even shares a personal story, right?
About
About discovering this when she was feeling uncertain and anxious.
Yeah, and the analogy she uses is fantastic. The Hogwarts room of requirement.
Oh, right.
That magical space that appears exactly when someone needs it, with exactly what they need. Exploratory writing is always there, but a lot of people just don't realize its potential.
And it's not just her, right? Allison points out people across different fields, creative writers, therapists, psychologists, they've all kind of independently stumbled upon this power of writing to clarify thought.
Yeah, which is fascinating. What's also noteworthy, though, is that in the business world, it's maybe not as widely adopted as you might think.
Right. But some thinkers have made the connection, like Dave Coplin. He talked about writing as a way to unravel the spaghetti of our thoughts.
Love that image. So you can think more clearly, actually do something effective.
Mm-hmm. And Dan Pink said something similar, didn't he? That writing is essential for him to figure things out.
Yeah, like he doesn't really know what he thinks until he writes it down. The act of putting words on the page crystallizes it.
And Kathy Renson-Brink highlights the privacy aspect. It's a space just for you to work through ideas and feelings without pressure.
What's particularly insightful is how some writers use it to access those pre-verbal thoughts, those gut feelings before they're clear words.
Michael Neal put it beautifully, saying, Writing forces me to give form to the formless. It makes me put words to the music.
Wow.
He sees it as enriching your understanding, even if you forget the exact words later. Just the act of trying to articulate brings things into focus.
It all just underscores this fundamental point. Writing isn't just for communicating outwards, it's deeply tied to how we process things internally, how we make sense of our own world.
So let's dig into the science then. Why does this magic actually work?
Okay, so Allison kicks off the science bit by calling writing basically an external hard drive for our brains.
Which makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, neurologically, our brains are amazing, but they have limits. Working memory can only hold so much, right? And our memories, well, they're not always reliable.
Tell me about it. We can't just keep piling stuff up in our heads indefinitely. We forget things.
Exactly. But language, and specifically writing, let humanity overcome these limits. Yuval Noah Harari talks about this in *Sapiens*, how writing was just crucial for complex societies, laws, organizing large groups, stuff you just can't do with individual memory alone.
Right. Imagine trying to coordinate building a pyramid just by talking. Seems impossible.
Totally. But, as Harari also points out, once you have all this written information, you need systems to manage it. Libraries, databases, search functions. Otherwise, it's just noise.
Which brings us to how our own brains retrieve information, which isn't exactly a neat filing system, is it?
Not at all. Harari has that great example. You go to sign a mortgage, and suddenly you're humming Wagner because one thought just triggers another associatively. That's the brain's natural way.
Yeah.
But when we write for others, we need structure, linearity, clarity.
We need those clearly labeled folders for taxes and insurance.
Yes. And that very need for clear, organized writing for others, while totally essential for communication, can actually mess with how we write for ourselves.
How so?
We feel this pressure to stay on track, structure arguments, make sure it makes sense to someone else.
So trying to be clear for others can stifle that messy initial exploration.
Exactly. We might resist those tempting tangents, those weird side ideas, because they'd confuse a reader, but those detours might hold the most valuable insights for us in that moment.
So if formal writing is like a polished presentation, what's exploratory writing?
It's the brainstorm before the presentation, the messy bit where all the raw ideas, even the half-baked ones, get thrown in. It's your internal sandbox.
I like that, the unedited flow.
And more than just a brain dump, Allison sees it like a petri dish. Thoughts interact, combine in unexpected ways, maybe while you're not even looking, and some just fade away, which is fine.
Okay, but we live in the digital age now. We have tons of tech tools for storage and organization. Aren't they solving this?
They absolutely help, no question. Digital calendars, to-do apps, search engines, they support our cognitive processes. That was kind of the original point of writing itself, in many ways.
But Allison hints at a downside to all this tech.
Yeah, her argument is that the screen, unlike paper sometimes, can actually work against focused thought. All the notifications, the constant connection, it disrupts deep work, as Cal Newport calls it. The very concentration these tools were maybe supposed to free us up for.
It's like being pulled in a dozen directions at once. Makes it hard to just think.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So while tech has huge benefits, the simple act of writing by hand on paper can offer this less distracting, more intimate space for that first messy exploration.
Okay, got it. So that's the external hard drive. What about joining up the brains? What does she mean there?
She's drawing on psychologist Steve Peters' chimp paradox model. It's a simplified way to see the brain, the rational human, the emotional chimp, and the habit-driven computer.
Right. The human is logical, the chimp is all instinct and emotion, and the computer runs the automatic stuff.
Exactly. And the thing is, our first reaction is often pure chimp, fast, emotional, especially to threats or negativity. The human can step in and analyze, regulate, but that takes time and effort.
And our chimp can cause trouble, right? Negative self-talk, impulsive actions.
Definitely. We can't get rid of the chimp, it's part of us, but we can learn to manage it better. And exploratory writing neurologically might help here. Allison suggests it strengthens the connection between the limbic system, the chimp's home turf, and the more rational prefrontal cortex.
So instead of being stuck in that anxiety loop driven by the chimp, writing helps shift us to a calmer, more rational, maybe even creative state.
Precisely. Angela Duckworth had this great conversation with neuroscientist Steve Mayer about it. Mayer talked about how higher brain areas can regulate the limbic system with thoughts like, hang on, I can actually do something about this.
That's the neurobiology of hope Duckworth mentions.
Exactly. And writing gives us the space and time to actually articulate those rational thoughts. It lets the higher order brain engage and soothe the reactive chimp. It fosters hope, a constructive outlook.
That makes so much sense, giving our rational brain a chance to catch up. Okay, what about instinctive elaboration? That sounds intriguing.
Well, she asks a simple question. What did you have for dinner 2 nights ago?
Okay. Uh, Thinking.
See? Even if it's random, your brain automatically tries to answer. That's instinctive elaboration. Give the brain a question, any question, and it feels compelled to generate some kind of answer.
And we're doing this all day long internally, aren't we?
Yeah.
Often without realizing it.
Right. Exploratory writing makes those internal, maybe subconscious questions visible. Which is valuable because, as Alison points out, vague questions lead to vague, unhelpful answers.
Like asking, why am I always so overwhelmed? That just triggers negativity, doesn't lead anywhere productive.
Exactly. But if you reframe it, what's one small step I could take today to feel a bit less overwhelmed? Suddenly you're directing your brain toward solutions.
It's about crafting better prompts for ourselves. Alison uses that great analogy with her dog, Sorcha, right?
Yeah.
Fetching.
Yeah. A clear question is like clearly pointing where you want the dog to go. It focuses our wandering attention, directs our mental energy towards useful answers.
So consciously writing down a good question steers our own instinctive elaboration in a helpful direction, like a mental rudder.
That's a great way to put it. A mental rudder. Okay, next piece. The storytelling brain. We all love stories, but how does that link to exploratory writing?
Alice's point is that narrative isn't just for fiction writers. It's fundamental. It's how our brains process experience to create meaning. Consciously, unconsciously, even in dreams. We're constantly building stories about ourselves, others, events.
It's like the brain's default mode, organizing life into a narrative.
Exactly. And stories help us rehearse futures, integrate learning, improve memory. That 1969 study showed information in a story is recalled way better than a list of facts. Stories are our mental frameworks.
But there's a potential downside, Alison flags.
Yes, we can start believing our own stories are absolute truth, confusing our interpretation with reality. The emotional brain jumps to a conclusion. The rational brain spins a narrative to justify it, and we buy it completely.
It's like that old joke about the fish asking, what the hell is water? Our own thoughts, our stories are our water, so pervasive we don't even notice them or question them.
Exactly, we're immersed. But exploratory writing lets us step outside the water for a bit, observe our thoughts more objectively. Michael Neal puts it so well. We think we are experiencing reality. We are actually experiencing our thinking.
Wow.
So making those internal stories visible on paper lets us evaluate them. Are they serving us, holding us back?
And crucially, it lets us consider alternative stories. Imagine different possibilities, choices that fosters agency can even shift our emotions. Like a novelist exploring fictional worlds, we can explore potential futures for ourselves on paper.
That feels incredibly empowering. Okay, so we've got the science. Now, how do we actually become an explorer using this?
Well, like any expedition, mental exploration needs preparation, and the most fundamental prep is the right mindset.
Adaptability seems key here. Alison stresses that things rarely go exactly to plan when you're exploring your own thoughts.
She uses that powerful example of Ernest Shackleton. His exploration mission went totally wrong, so he immediately pivoted to rescue. His quote is amazing. "A man must shape himself to a new mark directly the old one goes to ground. Mental flexibility is crucial."
We need to be ready to adjust our mental maps.
Mm.
Okay, practically speaking, where do we start?
Alison strongly advises starting small and focusing on consistency. She even shares her own struggle trying to stick to 10 minutes a day.
So what worked better for her?
Initially, she cut it to 5 minutes, figuring almost anyone could manage that. But then she found Gilly Bolton's recommendation of 6 minutes. Just 6.
6 minutes, that feels doable.
It really does. And Alison says start there. If you want to keep going after the timer, great, but no obligation. The key is the consistency of that short burst. She talks about streaking.
Not the running naked kind, she clarifies.
Oh, right. Her own personal streaks for running, stuff like that. She points to B.J. Fogg's Tiny Habits and James Clear's Atomic Habits. Small, regular actions build lasting change.
It's that shift, isn't it, from am I going to do it today to when am I going to do it today? Pre-commitment beats willpower.
Definitely. And what about tools? Fancy notebooks, special software?
Surprisingly, no. She recommends a big, cheap block of lined A4 paper.
Really? Why?
She argues it's less intimidating, feels temporary, and the physical act of writing engages the brain and body differently than typing.
The emphasis is on it being unself-conscious, right? Not about a polished product, just the process.
Exactly. She says save the beautiful notebooks for capturing the insights that come from the exploratory writing.
So cheap paper for the messy bit, nice notebooks for the treasures you find. Makes sense. It sounds like becoming a mental explorer is actually pretty accessible.
Totally. No huge time commitment, no big cost, no tech needed. Okay, now that we have the foundations, let's talk about applying this in a really key context, the workplace.
The modern workplace often feels like nonstop demands and distractions, doesn't it? Allison calls it an unprecedented crisis of well-being and engagement. That probably resonates. It really does. Think about the Great Resignation. Low engagement stats, rising work stress. It's a tough landscape.
So how can exploratory writing help here? Allison gives 3 practical examples. First up, invisible work and collaboration.
Right. The idea is that so much knowledge work is about making our internal, often fuzzy thoughts visible to others, or trying to figure out their unspoken thoughts. As John Hawkins says, handing over a half-completed idea is tricky.
That messy, in-progress thinking is hard to share effectively.
Exactly. Hawkins tells that story about Greg Dyke at Channel 5 using writing to clarify complex strategy. Individuals wrote memos, and they worked on them together. It brought the invisible work out, led to better understanding, clear decisions.
So exploratory writing is like a prep step. Clarify your own thinking before sharing, which leads to better collaboration.
Precisely. It helps ensure more diverse insights get heard, not just the loudest voices. The second area is crucial: workplace well-being.
And we know poor mental health has huge costs, human impact, financial burden on companies.
The stats are worrying. That UK government report, significant numbers losing jobs due to mental health issues, a big chunk of the workforce experiencing symptoms costing billions.
It's a serious issue needing proactive solutions. One recommendation was encouraging open conversations about mental health.
And this is exactly where exploratory writing fits. It offers a private, non-judgmental space to start articulating difficult feelings before you feel ready, or even if you never feel ready, to talk about them. A safe outlet.
Like a personal rehearsal space for tough conversations, internal or external. The third application is around agency, intention, and attention.
These 3 are interconnected and fundamental for getting things done. Agency, believing you can make things happen. Intention, choosing where to focus. Attention, actually staying focused.
And Allison argues that in our hyper-connected world, intention and especially attention are under constant attack.
Totally. But a regular exploratory writing practice can actually build that sense of agency belief in your actions. And it's dedicated practice time for setting intentions and directing attention, even if just for 6 minutes. It's cultivating these vital skills.
A mental training ground for skills easily eroded today. Okay, let's shift to what Allison calls adventures in sense-making. What exactly is sense-making?
Basically, it's how we select, interpret, and connect experiences to create coherent stories, how we make meaning out of the chaos of life and information.
We're used to neat, linear stories in books or reports, but exploratory writing offers a different kind of sense-making.
Yes, it's usually more fluid, associative, messier, which actually mirrors how our brains work. Peter Elbow said our thinking is seldom strictly logical, more satiating, analogical, metaphorical. Exploratory sense-making is like a proto-narrative, noticing things, exploring connections, finding interpretations.
Identifying those first threads of understanding in the jumble. And a key technique here is free writing.
Exactly. She used a great analogy. Business writing is like driving on roads with rules. Free writing's like riding a kite buggy in the desert. Freedom to follow the wind of your thoughts. Just keep writing, fast, to a prompt.
No censoring, no judging, just pure flow onto the page. What are the benefits?
Beyond sense-making itself, it's a fantastic writing warm-up. Gets words flowing without pressure, helps overcome writer's block. Once you realize you can just write through anything, the fear of the blank page shrinks.
So how do we do a free writing sprint specifically for sense-making?
Allison gives a concrete exercise.
Yeah.
Paper, 6-minute timer, prompt. My biggest challenge at work right now is right at the top, then just go. Fast, continuous, no editing.
And after the 6 minutes?
Read it back. Crucially, notice any sense-making. Did a pattern emerge? Did you connect unrelated ideas? Gain a new perspective? What surprised you? What felt helpful? What needs more exploring? It's reflecting on the raw output, looking for insights.
Analyzing the output for patterns and insights. Okay, next, adventure. Cultivating empathy. Why is empathy so critical?
Empathy, understanding, and sharing others' feelings isn't just about being nice. Interestingly, Google's Project Oxygen found it was a key trait of their highest performing employees and teams. It's a powerful driver of effectiveness.
Wow, that's fascinating. So how can writing help us build empathy?
Allison suggests using exploratory writing to consciously explore the perspective of someone you find challenging or someone you want to connect with better. A useful prompt could be a recent message or comment from them that stuck with you or bothered you.
So we'd free write about what might be going on for them, their motivations, concerns.
Exactly. It's powerful because it helps subvert attribution bias, our tendency to blame others' negative behavior on their character while excusing our own due to circumstances.
Right.
By deliberately taking their perspective in writing, you apply the bias in their favor. You consider situational factors, realize there are likely multiple valid narratives, not just your own first reaction.
Moving beyond immediate judgment, considering alternatives.
Precisely. Habitually trying to see others with more empathy can transform relationships. Okay, let's shift to inquiry. Why is a questioning mindset so important now?
Allison argues that inquiry, asking insightful questions, is essential for navigating today's rapid change. Old answers become wrong fast. New challenges constantly pop up.
She points to kids' amazing curiosity, 40,000 questions between ages 2 and 5. Alison Gottnick calls them the R&D division of the human species, constantly exploring.
But that often gets suppressed as we get older, right?
Yeah.
Especially in school.
Yeah. While inquiry-based learning is growing, traditional classrooms often prioritize teachers asking questions for curriculum targets, and that often carries into the workplace. Allison urges us to consciously smuggle more inquiry back into our lives.
Rekindle that childlike curiosity, Joy Ito's neoteny, redeeming youthful traits like curiosity into adulthood.
Exactly. Inquiry is also central to good coaching, asking questions to facilitate the other person's self-discovery. And through exploratory writing, Allison suggests we can become our own coach.
Using writing for self-inquiry, what kinds of questions work best?
She stresses the difference between closed questions, yes-no answers, and open ones, encourage deeper thought. Also, avoid toxic questions like, why do I always mess up? Which just reinforce negativity.
Right.
Think Tony Robbins. Successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers. The quality of our inquiry shapes the quality of our insights.
The framing really matters.
Yeah.
She has that interesting town hall meeting technique, too, for internal conflict.
Yes. When you're grappling with something tough, deliberately give voice to the different selves inside the fearful one, the analytical one, the inner child. Write down their different points of view. It brings competing narratives into focus, helps break internal gridlock.
A creative way to unpack complex internal stuff. What about inquiring of external sources, like books or articles?
Instead of just passively consuming, Allison suggests an active inquiry-based approach. Basically, turn the author or creator into your unwitting personal coach.
How do we do that practically?
A simple 2-column exercise. Left column. Take notes on key ideas from the resource, say 3 minutes. Right column. Ask, what does this mean for me? Then spend 3 minutes imagining the creator coaching you on applying it to your situation.
Actively making it personally relevant, drawing out practical implications.
Yeah.
Okay, this next one sounds wild. Inquiring of future you.
It's a fascinating technique, consciously tapping into the wisdom of your future self. Allison uses the Harry Potter time turner analogy. Believing you can do something because in the future you'd already done it creates pre-accomplishment.
A mental hack, but potentially very effective for overcoming limitations.
Exactly. Accessing solutions your present self can't see. The key is vividly visualizing the right future self, the one who's navigated the challenges, achieved the desired outcome. She even guides a quick visualization. Imagine where your future self is happy. Meet them. Ask a key question.
Consulting our own future wisdom. Creative. What about generating lots of questions on a topic? Question storming.
Basically, reverse brainstorming. Instead of answers, generate as many questions as possible about a topic or problem. Hal Gregerson calls it a question burst.
Focus is quantity first. What kind of prompts work?
Allison suggests using provocative statements, ones that challenge the status quo. Like, for business strategy, this business is indistinguishable from its competitors. Then, timer on, write down every question that comes to mind, no filter.
And after you have the list,
Review it. Pick the 3 most significant, intriguing questions, the ones with the most potential. Then use those 3 as prompts for more focused exploratory writing to start developing answers or new directions. Okay, shifting gears to something fun. Adventures in Playfulness.
Ah, playfulness. Often gets lost in adulthood, doesn't it?
It does, but Allison reminds us of Nyatni retaining childlike traits like play and curiosity. Kids are naturally unself-conscious, incredibly creative explorers.
That fresh perspective is so valuable for problem solving, generating ideas. How can writing help us tap back into that?
She suggests deliberately using exploratory writing before researching a topic. Explore your own initial thoughts playfully first. Then, when you do research, you're better equipped to recognize, appreciate, and creatively adapt existing ideas. Nurture your own originality first.
Nurturing our internal creativity before looking outwards. How does this connect to problem solving?
Approaching problems creatively is key, because a problem often means conventional approaches aren't working. Allison outlines a simple creative process. Articulate the problem, generate potential solutions, evaluate them, implement one.
Contrasting that with just grabbing the first idea and running with it.
Exactly. With exploratory writing for problems, the focus is often on deeply exploring the problem itself. Ask why. Questions upstream for root causes, downstream for consequences.
That deeper dive can reveal the real underlying issue, or maybe show it's not actually a problem from a different angle. Now, managing metaphors. Why are metaphors so fundamental?
They're foundational to how we think. We understand abstract concepts by relating them to concrete things we know. They shape understanding at a deep level.
But if people have different unconscious metaphors for the same thing, it causes trouble.
Exactly. If one person sees the team as family and another sees it as an elite sports team, their approaches to collaboration, conflict, motivation will likely clash. Exploratory writing helps make us aware of the metaphors we use so we can be more intentional.
How do we find these unconscious metaphors? Surfacing metaphors.
Look back at recent exploratory writing, especially about challenges, or do a free write on my work is. Then identify all the metaphorical language, anything not literally true. Reflect on its impact on your thoughts, feelings.
She gives that example of work being all-consuming, feeling like firefighting.
And just becoming aware lets the writer consciously shift, maybe reframe the boss as a supportive coxswain in a boat instead of a demanding captain.
Consciously reframing the metaphor can profoundly change perspective, emotion, action. She also has that playful technique, forced metaphors.
A surprisingly powerful creativity exercise for writing and problem solving. Grab 3 random objects, pick a problem. Write to the prompt. X the problem is like Y the object, because for each object. Spend about 6 minutes total.
Forcing connections between unrelated things sparks unexpected insights. She used traveling by narrow boat for recruiting.
Yeah, even if it feels forced or silly, it often leads to helpful discoveries, and it builds creative confidence. Okay, let's dive into adventures in self-knowledge.
Back to managing the inner chimp.
Indeed. Exploratory writing is invaluable for learning to understand and manage that reactive, emotional part of us. Allison mentions Professor Steve Peters' 15-minute complaint rule.
Right, just let it all out in writing for 15 minutes and you'll likely run out of steam.
Exactly, but often we just suppress the chimp's grumbling, which doesn't make it go away. Exploratory writing is a safe outlet to actually listen to the chimp, identify valid concerns, and maybe irrational fears driving it.
A dedicated chimp writing session. Permission to let the negative flow without judgment.
Yes, but within boundaries for everyday stuff, not deep trauma. After letting the chimp speak, the next step is celebrating the chimp.
Celebrate negativity. How?
The things that trigger strong emotions often point to what we care about most. Alice Sheldon said strong emotions indicate what matters. Look at the chimp writing what positive intentions or underlying values are fueling the negativity.
Reframing the concern, seeing the underlying need or value being protected. There's also flipping the chimp.
This involves articulating negative stories or limiting beliefs the chimp tells us, then writing through them to see how perceived weaknesses might actually be superpowers. Lack of experience could be flipped to humility, openness to learn.
Looking for the silver linings, the hidden strengths in negative self-perceptions. Okay, moving to a crucial area. Adventures in well-being.
Defining well-being can be tricky, but Allison uses a practical definition: the dynamic balance between your resources and the challenges you face.
I like that it's dynamic, individual, and acknowledges resources fluctuate.
And importantly, no challenges isn't healthy either. You need some for flow, for growth. When challenges outweigh resources, one strategy is to actively increase resources: psychological, social, physical.
We mostly get the physical ones: sleep, hydration, exercise, diet. the SHED method.
And while writing isn't a direct substitute, research suggests it can indirectly help physically, maybe boosting the immune system and improving sleep. But it's really in the psychological resourcing where writing shines.
Managing anxiety, negative self-talk, dissatisfaction.
Exactly. In our pressured modern lives, writing is a valuable, accessible tool for psychological resourcing. This brings us to therapeutic writing.
We've known for ages writing can be therapeutic, Aristotle's catharsis, emotional release.
But the formal study really took off with Pennebaker and Beale's 1986 study. Writing about trauma for just 15 minutes a day led to remarkable long-term health benefits.
Reduce anxiety, better memory, sleep, work performance, significant stuff.
And later research showed it wasn't just catharsis, but the cognitive processing, making sense of difficult experiences through writing. Julia Cameron talks about daily writing to metabolize experiences, avoid an unexamined life.
So even for everyday stresses, writing helps process and build healthier coping mechanisms, which leads to mental resilience.
Everyday resilience, quickly bouncing back from stress or setbacks. We need to be careful the term isn't misused to blame individuals for systemic issues, as Bruce Daisley warns.
Right.
But building our own capacity to bounce back is still valuable, especially with increasing disruption leading to chronic stress, burnout.
And resilience has benefits: better health, engagement, leadership, learning. A key part is reducing negative self-talk.
That inner critic can spiral into rumination. Exploratory writing brings that monologue into the daylight, lets us examine and challenge it objectively. Daylight is the best disinfectant.
Creating distance, seeing thoughts as just thoughts. Alison also mentioned we have multiple perspectives inside us.
Yes, we're not monolithic. Different parts, cautious, impulsive, analytical, emotional, react differently. Writing gives a safe space to voice these perspectives, which might get drowned out otherwise.
Like in that meeting example, the thoughtful voice gets missed, but writing later lets it be heard. Another powerful tool is self-coaching.
Using coaching questions as writing prompts helps reflect on experiences, learn lessons, spot growth areas. We can also use writing to notice and challenge limiting beliefs, those ingrained assumptions holding us back.
Questions like, is this always true? Or what's the evidence? Really break down those assumptions. Finally, mindfulness.
Often we think meditation, but mindfulness is broader. Slowing down, being present, self-aware, observing thoughts without judgment.
And for those who struggle with sitting meditation, writing can be a great alternative.
Absolutely. Francesca D'Alessio even suggests journaling might have greater research benefits for anxiety and depression than meditation. Writing lets you inhabit the present, engage senses, without pressure to empty the mind. There's even a parallel to the raw honesty of the Psalms. Now, Alison also adds visual explorations to complement text.
Moving beyond words, first up, mind maps.
Those versatile radial diagrams, central topic, branching themes, great for planning, brainstorming, breaking down complexity. Alison recommends starting hand-drawn for better brain engagement.
Hand-drawn feels more organic for initial brainstorming. Next, 2x2 matrices.
Simple but powerful frameworks for assessing info on two axes, like the Eisenhower matrix, urgent, important. Alison shares her own for business writing, clarity, insight, and encourages us to create our own for a live issue.
A great way to visually organize and see relationships. Then, fishbone diagrams.
A visual tool specifically for understanding root causes of a problem, like a missed deadline. The head is the problem. Bones are major contributing factors.
Systematically breaks down potential causes. She also covers concept diagrams.
More flexible diagrams showing elements and their relationships. Process diagrams, linear steps, cycle diagrams, recurring processes, relationship diagrams, connections between elements. Key is using them as lightweight, early-stage thinking tools.
Not overly formal, just visualizing connections and flow. Lastly, creating custom models.
Developing unique visual models based on analogies. Define the topic, brain dump elements, find a relevant analogy, map elements onto it. Kate Raworth's donut from Donut Economics is a prime example, a simple visual transforming understanding. And John Meduna's research shows images hugely boost memory. Now, we focused a lot on internal benefits, but this also helps external communication.
Makes sense. Writing is fundamental for communicating, right back to Sumerian merchants' records.
David Ogilvy said, people who think well, write well. Exploratory writing sharpens thinking, which naturally leads to better external content. It also helps overcome that blank page fear by giving you raw material.
Builds confidence and provides foundational material. How else does it improve communication?
Practicing empathy through writing makes us better at understanding our audience's perspective, leading to more resonant communication. Alison suggests a sprint. Write from the perspective of someone you need to influence their concerns upside what they need to hear.
Stepping into their shoes on the page. And finally, exploratory writing can be an end in itself.
Yes, Peter Elbow realized free writing often produces better writing overall, more energy, authenticity, flow, even if the goal is formal communication. The raw stuff has power.
So not just a means to an end, what do we do with all the insights? Capturing the discoveries.
While the initial writing is messy, it's crucial to selectively capture key insights, aha, moments, actions in an organized way notebook, digital doc, like an explorer mapping the safe paths found in the thought wilderness.
Extracting the valuable nuggets for future use. This links to reflective practice.
A formal learning tool based on Kolb's cycle. The reflective observation stage, thinking about what worked, what didn't, why, is where exploratory writing shines. It provides a record of experience and interpretation.
That intentional pause to learn, instead of just rushing on, research shows even brief, daily written reflection significantly improves performance.
Exactly. Even if your workplace doesn't build it in, your writing practice lets you do it proactively. Finally, Alison gives a fantastic list of prompts to get started.
Really insightful questions like, what story am I telling myself about this? Or what's another way of looking at this? Designed to spark deeper thought.
And she encourages us to find or create our own favorite prompts, ones that really resonate, and maybe share good ones. Find what unlocks your thinking.
So bringing it all together, exploratory writing sounds like this incredibly versatile, powerful tool. Helps gain clarity, foster creativity, solve problems, enhance self-knowledge, well-being, and communicate better.
Absolutely. It's a remarkably practical, accessible way for anyone to engage in ongoing mental exploration and growth right in the middle of everyday life.
So for our final thought today, we really encourage you, our listener, maybe take just a few moments right now. Grab a pen, paper, or open a blank document. Try a 6-minute exploratory writing sprint. Pick a question or challenge that's on your mind.
Don't worry about perfection. Just let thoughts flow. You might be genuinely surprised what emerges just from giving your thoughts that space to breathe and explore.
And afterwards, just take a moment. Reflect on what you discovered in that brief but potentially really transformative process.